For those who seek adventure, this is the Buffalo Roamer Podcast, sharing the people, places, and moments that make a life on the loose worth living.
The thing that's going to stick out to you most is when they open up that plane door. The cold is something like you've never felt.
The jungle's so thick, even if you had a machete, you couldn't get through it.
There's a huge blonde grizzly bear. And when it saw us, this thing put its head down, stomped on the ground, and hissed like an alligator.
I just crossed this brutal stretch of desert, and I was really suffering.
I'm your host, Will Collins. I'm an adventurer, outdoorsman, and roamer of wild places. I've backpacked the Brooks Range, rafted the Grand Canyon, and have canoed from source to sea, both the Mississippi and Yukon rivers. I live for adventure, travel, fresh air, and diving into the unknown. And now, I hope to share my passion with you on the Buffalo Roamer Podcast. Here we go, episode 69 of Buffalo Roamer Outdoors. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If you're enjoying the show, make sure you're subscribed. That helps the podcast to grow and helps make sure you get the latest episodes downloaded automatically when they drop every other week. A couple reminders, I got a Northwoods fishing trip coming up at the end of June, so short notice here, but still got a few spots open for that trip. We're going to be backcountry camping via canoe and fishing for bass, smallies, largies, walleye, pike, you name it. So check out buffaloroamer.com for a few of the details, but reach out to me, buffaloroamer@yahoo, to get on that trip. What else we got? This podcast is brought to you by Fischel Paddles, best canoe paddles in the world. Check it out yourself and feel the difference. Use the code WILL at checkout for FischelPaddles.com and you get a free paddle hanger. I use the Fischel paddles every time I go out. I've used all kinds of different paddles, and they're the best ones I found, so I really like them. Today, episode 69 is with Sean Gobin. Sean is a great guy, really interesting guy, and I enjoyed chatting with him. He is the founder of Warrior Expeditions, which you'll find out all about Warrior Expeditions here in the conversation, but enjoyed talking with Sean Gobin on episode 69 of Buffalo Roamer Outdoors. Excited to talk to you today, man. Looking forward to picking your brain, and sounds like you got an amazing organization going on with Warrior Expedition. So how you doing?
Oh, good. Just getting ready for kickoff season. We hit the road on Sunday to start kicking off trails. So it's busy prep time right now.
Nice. That's great. Where's the first one going off on Sunday?
We've got two groups that are going to be starting the Appalachian Trail 1 week apart. So we'll kick off the first group starting this Sunday, and then we'll do the second group the following Sunday.
Man, that's great. And so give me a background on exactly what Warrior Expeditions is and your role in it.
Sure. So Warrior Expeditions is a veteran nonprofit outdoor therapy program. And what we do is we help veterans transition from their wartime experiences through long-distance outdoor expeditions. And by long distance, I mean like 3 to 6 months. So we go in for the long haul. It all started with me when I got out of the Marines in 2012. I had just come off my third deployment, and I was in a pretty bad headspace and knew I needed to do something to help readjust before I started the next chapter of my life. And, hiking the Appalachian Trail had always been a dream of mine. So I got out of the Marines on March 14th, 2012, and I wasn't starting grad school until that following July. So I drove out the back gate of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, picked up some gear that was laying around the garage, and started hiking north. And 4.5 months later, it was a truly transformative and cathartic experience. And then from there, had the idea of, well, if this worked for me, I wonder if it would work for other veterans. And so we founded, at the time, it was called Warrior Hike. And then a couple of years later, it turned into Warrior Expedition because we included hiking and biking and paddling expeditions as well. And and then this is year 11 of doing Warrior Expeditions starting this year.
Man, that is awesome, man. That sounds like just a great program, right up my alley too. Obviously, how I was connected to you, I met one of your participants of the Warrior Expedition of a Mississippi River paddle, Eric Endries, I believe is how I say his last name. Sorry, Eric. And he was a listener of the podcast, and I have paddled the Mississippi River. I did it in 2017.
Nice.
And so I've done some other long trips. So I have a passion for that stuff, and I talk about it on the podcast all the time. So apparently he heard me talking about it on the podcast, and then through some research, found out about you guys, and ended up going on the Mississippi River through paddle, sponsored by Warrior Expeditions. I want to say that was a couple years ago now. I think it was COVID year, so maybe 2020. And I met him out on the river for a day as well. So after all of that, we kind of corresponded over email. You first reached out saying, "Hey, love the podcast," and then things grew. And I went out and paddled with him and his crew for a day and camped with them for a night on the Mighty Mist too. So that was awesome. It's just an amazing program, huh?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so you get to see the whole gear setup and everything else, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So from my perspective, how it works basically from talking with Eric and my understanding and your layout there, basically you outfit them with all of the gear that they need to do this and kind of help set up logistics for these super long expeditions, this Mississippi River, the AT, and some of the other trips that you do, right?
Yeah, so we do. We provide a lot of different types of support for the veterans, starting with, once they're selected, we outfit them with, the first thing we send them is all the clothing, make sure everything fits. And then we meet them at the start of the trail or the river. And so when we do an entire training and orientation package, so day one, everyone just kind of shows up. It's a meet and greet. Day two is all the training. So we show them how to use all the equipment and then any skill sets they're going to need to complete the expedition. And then day three, we hit the trail and or river, and then we shadow them. We shadow them for the first, anywhere from 3 to 5 days. Make sure they're good to go, reinforce skills, troubleshoot any issues. And then we peel off at the end of the training and orientation phase. And then their support then gets handed over to our community support coordinator. And so we have a staff member that coordinates community support along the entire length of the expedition. And so probably every like 5 days or so, as the river and or trail goes through towns, we have people from those towns that'll put them up for the night, give them a place to stay, a place to get cleaned up, hot shower, warm meal, and then put them back on the trail or river the next day. And so we have that lined up for the entire length of the journey. And then we also provide psychoeducational messages for them. So we have 2 psychologists that are on staff that are board members actually, and they send out emails once a week that are things that you would learn if you went through cognitive behavioral therapy with a counselor. And they basically teach you coping strategies and techniques as you go through the expedition to help cope with stressful situations and people, and kind of help to just decompress from being in combat mode while you're out in nature. And so those are all the types of support that we provide.
That's awesome. And multiple things, all kinds of stuff I love about it. But I thought it was cool that obviously that's a lot of support, but from my perspective, at least, it seems like it's pretty hands off. I mean, these guys are on their own journey, doing their own thing. Obviously, gear is one thing, but that's pretty much at the start. They do have the ongoing support, but there's no real hand holding along the way, right?
No, we outside of the training and orientation, which is very lockstep, just because we want to make sure we're setting everybody up for success. But after we do the training and orientation, it's completely a self-paced expedition. So that's kind of the beauty of it, because you go from the military where everything is so very structured and scheduled, and you do these expeditions, you get up when you want to get up, you start hiking and paddling when you want to start, you go for as long as you want, you go for as fast as you want, you take breaks when you want, you stop at the towns you want. And so it's a good way just to kind of be master of your own domain for 3 to 6 months and use those decision-making opportunities to help heal and grow as you make your way through the process.
That's great. So you've been doing this a long time now. How many people, or how many, I guess, people do you help support through a year? Like, how many trips do you organize?
So on a typical year, we usually support approximately 40 veterans, and then we have 10 trails that we typically support. So 40 veterans spread across 10 trails is what our typical year looks like.
That's awesome. And usually it's combat vets, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. So as far as application criteria, you have to be a combat veteran and have had an honorable discharge.
Okay, great. And what is it about? Obviously, I have my own experiences uninvolved with the military, but with these long distance trips, just the beauty and the glory of having that type of headspace. What have you found? Why is this successful? What have you found from these long distance trips that resonates?
So there's three things that we found, well, that I found during my expedition, but then we've also, verified over the years. There's three main things that veterans experience while doing these long distance outdoor excursions. And the first one is just having the time and space in nature to process everything you've gone through and decompress from everything that you've experienced. So, typically, when you're in, especially when we were in, when the deployments were just back to back, you were either on a deployment or you were training up for the next deployment. And then when you process out of the military, that's 100 miles per hour. And then, then you get out and you're scrambling, trying to get your civilian life in order. And so there's no opportunity there to just stop and process and decompress from everything. And so what these outdoor expeditions do is that it facilitates that, because now you're in nature 24/7 for 3 to 6 months, and you're hiking or paddling for 8 to 12 hours a day. And your whole existence is basically sleeping, eating, drinking, paddling, and hiking. So, and so it forces your brain to slow down. And when you're stuck in your own head for 3 to 6 months without all of the external distractions of, some menial job or the news or, social media, all that stuff is just shut out, and it's just you and nature and your own body. And it helps facilitate just, processing and decompressing from everything. So that's the first thing. I'm sorry, my dog is
No
letting me know
worries.
somebody's close by.
That's good
And,
stuff.
and the second thing is doing the expedition with other combat vets, because, they know what you've gone through, and they also understand what you're trying to do as you transition to the next chapter of your life. So that's why we always start everybody together. So you basically have a baked in support group from day one. Now, you're not required to stay with everybody. It's up to you who you click with or how fast you go compared to everybody else. So people usually end up splitting up into smaller groups according to pace and personality. But nonetheless, you've got people then that you can connect with and talk to throughout the process, which is good. And then the third thing is, as I mentioned before, we have community support set up along the way. And that's important because, if you've been on a lot of combat deployments and you've been exposed to a lot of kinetic combat experiences, your brain starts to get rewired where people are the threat. And after so much exposure to that, you get home and it's very hard to turn that off where people are no longer the threat. And so unfortunately, what a lot of veterans do is they get home, and if they're struggling with that transition, a lot of veterans will isolate from other people, from society, which then causes depression. And then you start to go down to the spiral of dysfunctional behavior. So with the community support that we have as part of our program is you're meeting all of these people who don't know you from Adam, but are basically, the most kind, generous people you'll ever meet in the world as they help you make your way, down the trail. And so what that does is it helps kind of just reestablish your basic faith in humanity that you might have lost along the way, that, people are not inherently bad. They're actually inherently good. And it'll help you break out of that, that isolation cycle that you find yourself in.
Yeah, it's great, man. Great thoughts and great conversation, because it's funny how I intuitively know all of those things that you just said, just from my own experience, not nearly as traumatic. Obviously, that's one of the most intense experiences I can imagine you could go through would be combat, but same concepts apply to almost everything, and it's so funny to a T. I think this is going to be somewhere in the 60s or 70s of episodes of this podcast. And everybody, you always, when you go on these expeditions, right, you always think it's going to be about the mountains, about the hiking, about the black bear you might run into, about whatever. And at the end, it's always the people. It's the people you meet along the way. It's the stories and the connections with those people along the trail, along the river, that are the things that resonate years down the road. And it's just like, it's just a theme that, that never stops. I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, these expeditions are kind of like a mini deployment minus the shooting, right? So it's a group of people that are kind of all struggling to accomplish the same mission. And so it's, that's why the camaraderie is so strong while you're out there, because everyone's kind of going through the same stuff. And, and by the time you finish, you're closer with people on the trail than you are with your families a lot of the time. So,
how long did it take for you to come to grips with your experience on the AT and how it helped you? Because it's kind of a hard thing to appreciate right away, I think.
Oh, definitely. So like I said, I drove out the back gate of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and had some old military gear laying around the garage, and I just started hiking. So I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't, put any research into it because I had just gotten back from deployment. And so, if you could make a laundry list of all the rookie mistakes that somebody could make, I made all of them, right from the start. And so, so as you can imagine, I had a lot of, overuse injuries right from the get-go. I shin splints and knee strains and blisters just because I was hiking too fast and too far, not taking my time, and my gear was all wrong. And so I was an absolute mess for probably about the first 30 days, because I got all those overuse injuries in the first 3 days, and then it took about 30 days for them to heal while I was hiking. So for the first 30 days, it was an exercise in pain management. But, I'm a fast learner, so I figured everything out after the first few days, and then it was just a matter of healing as I was making my way up the trail. But, once everything started to heal and, then spring, the warmer weather showed up, so it was no more hiking through freezing rain or snow. That's when I was finally able to focus externally, and I was like, wow, this is just an amazing experience. And so, months 2 and 3 was just, really enjoying the trail. And that's when I started to realize, like, wow, this is really cathartic. And, I could feel myself coming out of my shell and interacting with folks and, meeting people on the trail. And then towards the end of the trail, it helped. I realized I had, I started to process and come to terms with everything. And I was, interacting with people. And then it also allowed me to start looking forward and realizing, what was important in life and what wasn't. So it allowed me to kind of reprioritize life in my head to figure out, these are the things that are important. These are the things that don't matter. And then why that's important is then when I finished the trail, realizing those things helped guide me into the direction of the next chapter of my life. So, and as anyone who's spent a lot of time in the outdoors, you start to realize that, material things really don't matter. You think they matter, but they don't. It's really connections and your own health and well-being and, your own community. And so those are the things that are important, and it helps you to reevaluate that and then, again, help you make those decisions later on.
So did you go right from hiking the trail to building or trying to start warrior expeditions?
Kind of. I finished the trail and I started grad school. I was getting my MBA at the University of Virginia, and that winter, after I finished the hike, a couple of board members from the Appalachian Trail Conservancy had reached out to me and said, "Hey, we were following your hike, and we were interested in having some kind of a veteran outreach program on the Appalachian Trail for veterans, because the very first thru hiker on the Appalachian Trail was a World War II veteran." And I said, "Yep." I said, "I had the same thoughts. I was thinking the same thing while I was on the trail." And so that winter, 2012, 2013, we put our heads together, and then in 2013 launched Warrior Hike, and we supported the first group of veterans on the trail in 2013. So I was still in grad school. I had a couple business plans I was, rolling around in my head. I was also in the hiring process with the DEA. And I think it was like phase 4 or something with the DEA to become a special agent. But to now kind of dovetail what I was just talking about, I kind of had I was at a fork in the road. I could become a special agent with the DEA, which was essentially going to go from the pot to the frying pan compared to being in the Marine Corps to now being a special agent. I could, work the typical MBA job where I work for some bank or insurance company, some soulless job, sitting under a fluorescent light, grinding out spreadsheets every day. Or I could now, this Warrior Expeditions thing that I started, which seems to be gaining traction and helping folks. I was like, well, that seems to be probably the path I should go. And so again, just from my experience on the trail, kind of helped me see that clearly. And so, I turned down, I shut off the application process with the DEA, and then finished grad school, and then just put all of my time and energy into Warrior Expeditions and kept pushing that ball forward. And yeah, here I am 11 years later, still doing Warrior Expeditions.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Hey, it's Will here. I want to take a moment to let you know about our show sponsor and partner, Fischel Paddles, makers of fine, handcrafted wooden canoe paddles. I spent a lot of time paddling rivers and lakes, and Fischel paddles are the best canoe paddles that I've come across. I use the Race Special model myself, and I outfit all the guided trips that I run with Fischel paddles too, because I think they're the best. Each paddle is handmade by Greg Fischel at his shop in Flagstaff, Arizona, from a single piece of wood. What I love most is the shape and feel of the paddle. Other than being beautiful and efficient, it puts less strain on your shoulders and arms than a typical paddle would, while actually giving you more control and finesse with each stroke. Plus, the shape of the blade just feels right cutting through the water. All paddles are customizable from the type of wood, whether that's cherry, ash, or maple, to laser engravings, and my favorite, which is the leather strap that Greg pins around the shaft so that it doesn't get beat up as you run along the gunnels, prying off or doing the J-stroke in the back of the stern there. So go get yourself a Fischel paddle now and feel the difference. Use the code WILL at checkout. That's WILL to get a free wooden paddle hanger with any paddle purchase. That way you can show off and organize that new handmade paddle. Check them out at FischelPaddles.com. That's FISHELL paddles.com. Fischel Paddles, handcrafted wooden canoe paddles. Or what were some of your favorite moments from your AT hike in 2012?
Oh, well, it kind of ties to why I'm living in Virginia now. So my favorite part of the trail was the Shenandoahs in Virginia. That part of the Appalachian Trail, it parallels the Blue Ridge Parkway and the Skyline Drive. And the Skyline Drive has these buildings called way stations along the Skyline Drive, which are like these little restaurant diner places, and they serve blackberry pancakes and blackberry ice cream and blackberry wine and cheeseburgers. And so, for that entire stretch of trail, I didn't carry a single thing in my pack food-wise, and I just went from way station to way station, eating pancakes and cheeseburgers and ice cream and wine. And the weather was perfect, and there was blackberry everywhere, and that was like just that was the best part of the whole trail. And so that's why I was like, yeah, I think Virginia is where I'm gonna plant the flag when I'm done. So here I am.
That's great, man. And how about looking back? Was there any particularly challenging moment from that trip?
Yeah, the first 30 days. After I did all that damage on the first 3 days, and then trying to hike through all those injuries, in the cold, in the early spring was just, it was a treacherous, it was touch and go there for the first month, which is why we do the training and orientation for expeditions now. That's the whole goal of that is, we try to, hopefully prevent people from making all the same rookie mistakes that I made and a lot of thru hikers make, to set them up for success. So, learn from my pain and misery, and set yourself up for success. So that's why we do that.
That's great. Yeah, I remember on the Mississippi when I first did it. Again, no idea, just kind of shooting from the hip and going and trying to figure out the best way to make it work. And I had, I think I had 2 cast iron pans. I had like a full size guitar. I had, like 4 or 5 books. I had all kinds of stuff. 2 cutting boards, and of course I ended up like ditching it and pawning it off as the trip went on and as you learn. But of course, looking back on it, as you probably know now as well, the beginning of that trip, the Mississippi, I forget, there's a couple dozen dams that you have to portage. And once you get to Minneapolis, you can go all the way through. You don't really even need to get out of your boat because you can hop through the locks. But that beginning part, the first month or so of Minnesota, tons of portages. And of course, that's when I was heaviest and lugging around cast iron pans,
Yep. Yeah, we tried, and we took the thru hiker approach to our paddling expeditions, where you pack light, just have the the bare essentials, what you need. Our boats are small and light. We've got those carts, those wheel carts you can throw on them. So all you got to do is just, put your pack on with your gear and grab the boat, put the wheels on it, and boom, you can do a mile portage, no problem. So.
Yeah, I should have had a shakedown with you guys.
Well, I think you said you did it in 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was our second year on the river. So yeah, there was already a huge learning curve. So we could have probably helped you avoid a couple of things.
That's funny. What obviously you have a pull to the AT, I would assume, but what are the other trips you do? The AT, the Mississippi, and you mentioned a handful of other trails, and then what would be your personal favorite out of those?
So we have 8 hiking expeditions, and 3 of those are the long trails. So the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail out west, and then the Continental Divide Trail that goes up through the Rockies. And then we have 5 shorter hiking expeditions, which we call our state trails. So those trails traverse a single state. So you've got the Florida Trail, the Arizona Trail, the Ice Age Trail that crosses Wisconsin, the Buckeye Trail that circles Ohio, and then the Mountains to Sea Trail that crosses North Carolina. And those 5 trails are good because they're a little bit easier to do and they're a little bit shorter, so they're good for beginners. And they're also shorter, so if you're in school, you can do a state trail in between spring and fall semester. But another advantage to the state trails is if it works out, if you've got a veteran from that state hiking that state trail. So for example, if you've got a Florida veteran hiking the Florida Trail, as you make your way through the trail, you meet all these people along the way. And then when you get done, as you're starting the next chapter of your life, you've got an entire network of folks that you met within your own state that you're now friends with, that can help facilitate that process.
That's
so those
awesome.
are our 8. Those are our 8 hiking trails, and then the Mississippi River, like you said, that goes from northern Minnesota all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. It takes about 3 months to do. So that's our paddle program, and then we have a biking program that goes along the Great American Rail Trail, and that starts in Washington D.C. and it goes 4,000 miles all the way to Washington State in the Olympic Peninsula. And so that's our biking program.
Awesome. I've heard of pretty much all of those. A handful of those state trails are new to me. Sound awesome. I've done sections. I live here in northern Illinois, is where I'm at. I've done sections of the Ice Age Trail, and I think that's an awesome trail.
Yeah, they're all great in their own way. So they all have got pluses and minuses, right? So it's whatever kind of things are that you really enjoy, and then the things that you might not enjoy, you need to like. So if you don't like bugs, stay away from the Ice Age Trail. If you don't like the heat, stay away from the Arizona Trail. So you just kind of have to find out what terrain and weather conditions that you find most enjoyable, and pick those trails accordingly.
Have you done any of these other or sections of these other trails, or another longer trip other than that AT in 2012?
The only one I've done the entirety in its entirety is the Appalachian Trail, and then I've done the first week of all of these other trails every year because we do the training and orientation package for each of them. So I know the first week of all those trails like the back of my hand. I thought eventually I'd be able to get back out there and do some more long trails on my own, but running more expeditions is kind of a full-time gig. So it's kind of like the old saying, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. Well, the executive director of War Expeditions doesn't get to go out and do expeditions anymore because he's too busy, running everybody else's. So
I hear you. That's life, right?
Yep.
That's funny. What are there any stories that come to mind? I'm thinking of wildlife that you hear from participants of like cool wildlife encounters.
So yeah, your typical bear. There's a lot of black bear on the East Coast, brown bear, grizzly bear out west. Luckily, we haven't had any, hairy bear encounters with the grizzlies. Usually the bears see and they run, or they just ignore you. But a lot of snakes. Like the Arizona Trail is like snakes all day, every day. So, and then our biking program goes through Yellowstone. So, you see all the, you get to go through the, the bison and all that. Going through Yellowstone National Park is cool. But yeah, just your typical bears and snakes and, lots of squirrels and chipmunks and birds and all that. I mean, yeah, and in Florida it's cool too, because you got the gators. Matter of fact, the Florida Trail starts, the first section of the Florida Trail, you go through the Great Cypress Swamp. And so you start at the visitor center down south. And as you're driving to the visitor center, all the alligator are sunning along the side of the road in the culverts. And so as you're pulling into the visitor center, all the alligators are hanging out. And then you go to the visitor center and you sign in, and then you into the swamp you go. But interestingly enough, we've never seen the gators in the swamp. They're always just hanging out by the road. So once you go into the swamp, you don't see them. But it is unnerving pulling up and starting surrounded by alligators, though.
Gators are funny, man, especially for someone like me from the plains up here in the north, man. It's like they're like they're like raccoons down there, and the people treat them like it. It's just like it's like nothing. I guess it's like moose in Alaska or something.
Yeah. Yep.
That's funny. What do you notice the perceptions of what participants are coming in before the trip versus what their takeaways of it after are? And it's a weird way to phrase that question, but yeah. Do you understand what I'm getting at, kind of?
Yeah, it's funny. So when people start these expeditions, they think they're going out into the wilderness like an episode of Survivor, right?
Right,
and
exactly.
I'm like, no, man. You're not coming out here trying to live off the land. It's not that. Trust me, you're going to be eating good, and you cross plenty of towns, and you have access to hotels and restaurants and everything else. Really, it's all about forward movement. That's the name of the game, forward movement. So you just got to keep walking or paddling or pedaling, and then, deal with everything that comes along with that. So, terrain and weather and injuries. But yeah, it's not Survivor. You're not out there trying to start a friction fire or build yourself a shelter,
And what, after a trip, after somebody has come off of it, what, I assume that most of these people have moving experiences, right? Or have a takeaway that is positive. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep going, right?
Well, that was the thing. When I did my expedition, I knew how it impacted me. But the first year we supported veterans on the AT, the following year in 2013. I mean, it was a social experiment at that point. Who knew how they were going to be affected from it? But lo and behold, they had the same impact. They experienced the same impacts that I did. And the veterans report each year, at the end that, it's very similar experiences, very similar impacts. And so yeah, it's across the board. And the interesting thing too, is you meet folks out on the trail and you realize, this isn't great just for veterans. It's great for everybody, because you've got folks out there dealing with all kinds of stuff. You got folks that have, lost a spouse or a family member, who are between jobs, who have recovered from cancer, who are recovering from substance abuse, who are people that were abused as kids or an abusive marriage. You got folks out there dealing with, you name it, and you see it, and everybody's kind of out there looking for peace and healing for their own reasons. And it works for everybody, as long as you enjoy the outdoors. I'll preface that. As long as you like being outside, then it's a great cure-all.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. It makes me want to go start walking right now. What else can we do as like a society, as Americans, or whoever?
Sorry about that. My buddy's actually here.
No worries.
Helping me get the van RV ready for our upcoming expeditions. We've been wrenching on the van for the last few days. So
awesome. That's good. No worries. Not at all. What can we do as Americans, or as a society, to help better facilitate the transition between war and peace?
Well, I think, one thing is we need to protect our, our wild spaces. So I'm a big proponent of, our national parks and the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management. I think protecting, our wilderness in America is one of our greatest resources. And so I think we need to make sure that we keep those for future generations to appreciate, because that was one of the things that I realized was, when I came back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and I got to traverse the country through all of these public lands, it helped you appreciate what you were fighting for. It helped to reinforce, like, oh, okay, this is why America is special, and this is why America is different. And so we need to continue to do that. As far as if you've got friends or family, that are just getting out of the military or coming back from a war zone, and you see them struggling, just encourage them to reach out to the VA and take advantage of those resources that are available, whether it be counseling or whatever, to help them with that transition process. And then the other thing is, what I found is the biggest thing to help transition is you just got to find the one thing that's gonna pull you back into society, right? Because I talked to you earlier about how veterans are so prone to isolating when they get back. You just got to find that one thing. For us, it's hiking, biking, and paddling. But for others, it could be art, it could be music. I remember when I read the book about Carlos Hathcock, who was a really famous Marine Corps sniper from Vietnam, and he had come home and he was really struggling. He was in Virginia. He came home to Virginia, and he was basically locked himself in the house, and he was drinking. And one of his buddies had bought a boat to go shark fishing. And so, and he came by and was like, "Come on, man, we're gonna go fishing." And that ended up being the thing that kind of broke the cycle. So they took him out in the boat, and they would go out shark fishing all the time. And then he was engaged with friends and people again, and helped stymie the drinking. And so you just got to find that one thing, whatever that one thing is, to just pull you out of the darkness. That's where you've got to kind of steer people to go figure out what their passions are and go for it. And that's the thing that kind of breaks the spell.
Yeah, I could see that. What's next for Warrior Expeditions? Obviously, you said you're pushing off a few trips here in the next couple days. What are the visions and the grandeur of Warrior Expeditions here in the near future and beyond?
So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We've got our 10 trails that we support, and we'll continue to cycle veterans through those trails every year. And then on the side, I know we're working on another platform where veterans can link up with other veterans just to go do outdoor trips. So not necessarily 3 to 6 month long trips, but basically a platform where we can say, "Hey, I'm going to go in July and spend a week out on the Colorado Trail," or "We're going to go paddle the white waters in Tennessee for a weekend," and just kind of have a platform where veterans can connect with each other and just get it in the outdoors and do stuff. One of the things we explain to veterans is, when you do these expeditions, it's not a cure. So if you experience trauma, you're changed forever. That's just how it is. But how you cope with it is the key, right? And so what we're hoping we teach our veterans is to use the outdoors as their long-term mental health strategy and physical health strategy. So, even when you get home from these expeditions and you start to feel the stressors and triggers of life build up again, hey, grab your pack and hit the outdoors and just kind of use that as a long-term coping strategy. And so we're working on a platform to just kind of keep veterans engaged in the outdoors as a lifestyle. And so that's kind of the next big initiative that we're working on.
Great. I'm sure if there's a vet listening right now, as I know many do, who's interested in this, they probably already hopped on and Googled Warrior Expeditions if they've gotten through this far about it. But how would veterans go about, if this sounds like something that piques their interest, how would they go about seeing if it's a right fit or getting involved?
Sure. So on our website, there's an apply page, and you can submit your information there. We collect applications throughout the entire year, and then we do our application screening process in December. and then we make our selections for the following year. So yeah, you can submit your application at any time. And on our website, we list all the different trails that we support. We also list the types of support you get being enrolled in our programs. And then you can go to our social media sites, and we post pictures regularly of our veterans out on the trails, making their way up the trails and rivers. And so you can watch them throughout the year, how people are progressing, to get an idea of what it's like. And and then if you love the outdoors and you think it would help you to transition from your wartime experiences, then yes, submit your application.
Great. And how about if somebody wanted to learn more or help out Warrior Expeditions, if it's a cause they found worthy, which I don't see many who wouldn't?
Yeah, so we have on our website too, we have our Join Our Team page. And so if you want to submit your information to be a volunteer, you can do that. Especially if you look at our expedition pages, we have map chips, interactive map chips of all of our trails. So if you or anybody is located near a trail that wants to host a veteran while they're making their way along the trail and be a community supporter, you can go to our Contact Us page on the website and let us know you want to be a community supporter, and we can tie you in that way too.
Man, how awesome would that be to be able to host one of these hikers or paddlers through and be able to get a piece of the adventure yourself too, right? There's definitely it goes both ways. The hiker and the paddler is appreciative, and I think the host usually gets some good stories too, right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, a lot of our community supporters, interestingly enough, are Vietnam veterans, which is an interesting story because for anyone who's a student of history, the American people treated the Vietnam veterans very poorly when they came home, and so their mantra is, we'll never let another generation of veterans be treated like we were when we got home. And so they are our most fanatic supporters. And so when we reach out to them and, they're like, yeah, absolutely. And so, they love to put the veterans up and hear their stories and share their stories about what it was like when they transitioned, when they came home. And so, it's a win-win for both sides.
That's awesome, man. Well, Sean, I'm gonna let you run. Sounds like you got some more van cranking and wrench cranking and van packing to do to get ready for your next expedition, huh?
Yeah, it's been nonstop this year.
That's great, man. Well, hey, I appreciate the time, and it's warriorexpeditions.com, right?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Appreciate the time. Keep doing the good work, my friend, and appreciate what you're doing. And we'll stay in touch, and best of luck to you and Warrior Expeditions.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
There you have it. That's episode 69 with Sean Gobin on Buffalo Roamer Outdoors. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure you are subscribed. Don't forget, got a few spots left on this Northwoods fishing trip in Wisconsin at the end of June 2023. So if you're still listening and there's time, you can reach out to me or buffaloroamer@yahoo.com or check out the website, buffaloroamer.com, to get some more details. If you're enjoying the show, reach out and say hi. Let me know. Drop me a note, buffaloroamer@yahoo, and enjoy the day. Hope you get some fresh air, or the night, whenever you may be listening. Take it easy.